On the evening of November 7, 2010, a Canadian police officer was conducting a routine patrol on the highway when a small black truck suddenly sped out from among the trees bordering the road. It seemed suspicious, as if the driver had been hiding in the forest for some shady reason. The officer's instincts were immediately aroused, especially since, at that time of year, the forest was a protected natural area where hunting was strictly prohibited. Without hesitation, the officer activated his siren and began pursuing the truck to find out what was going on. He ordered the driver to pull over to the side of the road, and once the young man complied, the officer cautiously approached him and requested his identification. At that moment, something caught the officer's attention and triggered his alarm. The young man had bloodstains on his face and clothes, and some of those stains were smeared across parts of the vehicle as well. Initially, the officer suspected that the young man might have violated the strict anti-poaching laws enforced in Canada, especially during the wildlife breeding season. At that time, it was common for some hunters to exploit the forests in search of protected deer, a crime severely punished by law. For this reason, the officer decided to temporarily detain the young man while park rangers investigated the area to ensure no illegal hunting had taken place. But what the rangers found went far beyond any expectations. It was far more sinister than simple poaching. After an exhaustive search of the area, they discovered the body of a young woman buried in the snow-covered forest. She had been brutally mutilated. From first glance, it was clear that she had been violently sexually assaulted. She was completely naked, with bruises and marks all over her body, indicating that she had fiercely resisted her attacker until her final moments. This unknown girl was none other than the fourth and final victim of Canada's notorious serial killer Cody Legebokoff, who became known in the media as the Country Boy, a reference to the alias he used online to communicate with his victims. Cody's string of murders sent shockwaves across Canada, and despite the police's ongoing efforts, they struggled for a long time to track him down. No one could have imagined that he would be caught purely by chance. So, if you're curious to know the full story of this serial killer and the brutal details of his crimes, stay with us through the end of this video, where we always try to unveil the most complex crimes and mysteries. Cody Legebokoff was born on January 1, 1990, in the small town of Fort St. James in rural British Columbia, Canada. He grew up in a well-off family that owned one of the region's largest businesses, providing him with a peaceful and stable childhood. Unlike many serial killers who came from troubled backgrounds, Cody's early years were described as happy and full of fun. Those who knew him in his youth described him as a friendly, cheerful, and witty child. He was passionate about sports, actively participating in various athletic activities at school, and showed particular talent in hockey and ice skating, which earned him popularity among his peers. He quickly became well-liked, with many classmates seeking his friendship, making him a sociable and admired figure in school. Cody was also very close to his grandfather, who often took him on hunting trips. Through these outings, Cody developed a deep passion for hunting from an early age, which helped cultivate a hands-on, practical side to his personality. However, during his teenage years, a more violent side began to emerge. He frequently got into fights in bars and alleyways, but his family dismissed this behavior as typical of teenage rebellion. After completing high school, Cody briefly lived in Lethbridge, before moving to the city of Prince George, the city where all his crimes would eventually unfold. There, he found a job at a local car dealership and moved into an apartment he shared with 3 friends. He spent most of his free time either with his girlfriend or browsing the internet, where he became obsessed with chatting with strangers, particularly young women. At that time, Cody became active on the Canadian social media platform Nexopia, but he didn't use his real name. Instead, he chose a rural-themed alias, Country Boy. He would later use this platform to lure in his victims one by one. As time went on, Cody developed a serious addiction to cocaine, a notoriously expensive drug. He realized that addicts desperate for a hit were willing to do almost anything to get it, and he exploited this fact to lure vulnerable women. He would promise them generous amounts of the drug, but in reality, his intentions went far beyond just engaging in sex. He was planning far more brutal acts. Cody's first murder took place on October 9, 2009, when he arranged a meeting with Jill Stachenko, a 35-year-old woman. Jill was a mother of 6 and an aspiring singer chasing her dreams, but she couldn't resist the temptation of a drug fix. She agreed to meet Cody, hoping for a moment of euphoria. But that fateful night would be her last. When Jill arrived at Cody's apartment, he asked her to come downstairs to the basement, where they were supposedly going to make their arrangement. Expecting to get her dose, Jill was caught off guard when Cody suddenly and violently attacked her as soon as she sat on the couch. Before she could scream or call for help, he struck her repeatedly on the head with a metal object. He continued beating Jill mercilessly until he was certain she was unconscious. He then stripped her clothes and sexually assaulted her. But his brutality didn't end there. After the assault, he pulled out a knife and stabbed her multiple times until she died. After ensuring she was dead, he loaded her body into the trunk of his car and drove to a remote location outside the city. There, he buried her in a shallow grave beneath the snowy landscape, believing that nature would cover up his crime. Upon returning home, Cody attempted to clean the bloodstains from the basement couch, but soon realized that scrubbing out the evidence wouldn't be easy. After several failed attempts, he gave up and left the couch as it was, confident that his roommates rarely ventured down to the basement. Despite the obvious evidence he left behind, Cody showed no signs of fear or remorse. On the contrary, he maintained a chilling calmness, as though nothing had happened. Just 3 days after the murder, he even attended Thanksgiving celebrations with his girlfriend and her family, showing no indication of guilt or anxiety. About a year after committing his first murder, Cody moved out of the shared apartment to a new place. But even after moving, he didn't forget the blood-stained couch from the first crime scene, an item that would later become a crucial piece of evidence against him in court. It seems that this experience taught him an important lesson. Committing murder at home makes it extremely difficult to get rid of the evidence. That's why he changed his approach in subsequent killings, luring his victims to isolated locations such as forests or horse barns, where he could act unseen. After a long period of quiet, Cody resumed killing on August 1, 2010. This time, he targeted a young woman named Natasha Lynn Montgomery, a 23-year-old mother of 2. Her sudden disappearance was immediately noticed, prompting her family to file a missing persons report with the police. Despite extensive efforts by authorities to locate her, Natasha's body has never been found to this day. What's more disturbing is that after his arrest, Cody refused to speak about the details of this crime, leaving many questions unanswered about how he killed her or where he hid her remains. Cody didn't stop there. On September 10, 2010, he committed another horrific crime, this time targeting Cynthia Frances Moss, a woman in her mid-30s. Cynthia had fallen deep into cocaine addiction, transforming from a respectable woman into a desperate addict willing to do anything for a fix. So when Cody offered to spend time with her, she didn't hesitate, unaware that she would never leave that apartment alive. This time, Cody had the place all to himself, giving him complete freedom to unleash his savagery. He began by violently beating Cynthia on the head until he crushed her skull. But he didn't stop there. He shattered her nose, knocked out her teeth, and broke her bones. After stabbing her several times across her body, he even sexually assaulted her post-mortem. Once he was done, he dumped her naked body in an abandoned park near the Fraser River, once again assuming that nature would conceal his crime. At this stage, the Canadian police began to realize that what they were dealing with wasn't just random disappearances or isolated crimes. After gathering scattered clues and connecting the crimes, investigators reached a horrifying conclusion. There was a sadistic serial killer roaming free, targeting vulnerable women, and taking pleasure in brutally torturing and assaulting them before disposing of them. However, despite this progress in the investigation, the identity of the killer remained a mystery. The police were unable to find any direct physical evidence linking the crimes, and the community was gripped by an unprecedented state of fear and confusion, especially since Canada is known as a peaceful and quiet country that rarely witnesses such horrific crimes. Things remained this way until Cody made a fatal mistake. The story began when Cody was searching for a new victim to add to his gruesome chain of crimes and happened to meet a young student named Loren Leslie. She was in the prime of her youth and suffered from severe visual impairment. Nevertheless, she was an active member of her community, known for helping people suffering from depression, and often participated in online conversations to support those contemplating suicide. Although Loren was close to Cody's family and he knew her personally, he did not hesitate to lure her in the same way he had done with his previous victims, indifferent to her condition or their personal connection. After weeks of exchanging text messages, Cody managed to convince Loren to meet him on the evening of November 7, 2010, telling her they would spend time together having drinks at a bar or at his apartment. But Loren soon realized that Cody's intentions were far more sinister than just hanging out, and she met the same tragic fate as his previous victims. Once he lured her in, Cody began brutally beating her on the head and face, breaking her nose and jaw. Despite the intense violence, Loren tried to defend herself, but Cody gave her no chance. He stomped on her fingers to make sure she couldn't fight back anymore. After satisfying his sadistic urges, he sexually assaulted her, then stabbed her multiple times in the neck, ending her innocent life. After committing the crime, Cody placed Loren's body in his pickup truck and drove to a remote area in the forest bordering Highway 27, where he disposed of her body in an isolated spot among the trees, thinking the woods would hide his crime forever. But fate had other plans. As he was leaving the forest, a police officer on routine patrol happened to come across Cody's black pickup truck emerging from the trees at an odd time. This was especially suspicious since the forest was under strict anti-poaching laws during that season. The officer immediately pulled over the vehicle and asked Cody to step out. As he approached, he noticed bloodstains on Cody's face and clothes, as well as a pool of blood on the truck's floor. When the officer asked about the source of the blood, Cody tried to dodge the question, claiming he had been hunting deer in the forest. But his strange behavior and sudden outburst, demanding to be allowed to leave, only heightened the officer's suspicions. The officer decided to temporarily detain Cody and called in forest rangers to search the area where Cody claimed he had been hunting, following the tire tracks in the snow. While waiting for the results, the officer began searching the truck and found a set of disturbing items. A blood-covered iron wrench, a monkey-shaped bag containing a young girl's phone, a wallet with an ID card belonging to Loren Leslie. This completely invalidated Cody's deer hunting story. It was clear this was no simple wildlife violation. What the police didn't yet know was the horrifying discovery the rangers were about to make. Minutes later, a call came from the rangers confirming the worst fears. They hadn't found a dead animal as Cody had claimed, but the body of a young girl, mutilated and partially unclothed, buried under the snow. It was Loren Leslie. Despite the severe mutilation, investigators were able to confirm her identity thanks to a distinctive tattoo on her wrist. With all this evidence, Cody continued to deny any involvement in the crime. He claimed he had been in the forest hunting and stumbled upon the body by chance, but didn't report it for fear of being implicated. He also said her belongings were in his vehicle because he took them after finding them, trying to make his story seem believable. But these lies quickly fell apart after investigators discovered hundreds of text messages exchanged between him and Loren, proving a prior relationship. When confronted with the evidence, Cody changed his story again, this time claiming Loren had committed suicide. He said they were in a consensual sexual relationship, and then alleged that she hit herself with a wrench and stabbed herself with a knife. An absurd claim no one believed. Police obtained a warrant to search his home, where they found damning evidence. DNA samples matching 3 other victims. Digital evidence from his computer confirming contact with victims via social media. Faced with all this, Cody had nowhere left to hide. He was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, in addition to charges of sexual assault, kidnapping, and desecration of corpses. His trial began in mid-2014 before the British Columbia Supreme Court. During his testimony, Cody again tried to evade responsibility, claiming he was merely a witness, not the perpetrator, and blamed 3 alleged drug dealers. However, police had already confirmed there were no accomplices, and no evidence suggested anyone else's involvement. In September 2014, the jury returned a verdict convicting Cody Legebokoff of all charges, and he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. During sentencing, Judge Glenn Parrott could not help but state, "Cody should never be allowed to walk among us again." After the sentencing, Cody was transferred to a maximum security prison. But in March 2019, something unexpected happened. Cody was moved to a medium security prison in Ontario, which enraged the victims' families. They saw this decision as an insult to the memory of their loved ones, especially after reports surfaced that the transfer might be a step toward his possible parole in 2039. Families protested, joined by several civil organizations, including the Women's Centre at the University of Northern British Columbia, which released a report stating, "If Cody completes the rehabilitation program in this medium security prison, all he will learn are social skills that will make him a smarter, more secretive killer." The report noted that Cody had shown no remorse and continued to insist on his innocence. He still hadn't revealed the location of victim Natasha Lynn Montgomery's body, deepening her family's pain. The possibility of Cody's parole sparked division in Canadian society. Some believe he doesn't deserve a second chance due to his brutality and lack of remorse. Others argue that rehabilitation programs could change him and reintegrate him into society. So what do you think, dear viewers? What are your thoughts on the crimes Cody committed? Do you believe he deserves a second chance? Or should he remain behind bars for the rest of his life? Share your opinions in the comments below, and don't forget to support us by liking and subscribing to the channel to stay updated. Stay safe, and may peace be with you all.